okay, this is gonna be, I'm guessing, part 5. Guys, I'm really trying to be good at actually filming, but like, yeah. So we see here that Coyote actually finds, I'm actually trying to find one of this so we can analyze them later. So we see that Coyote here is, you know, finding error in, you know, very simple, in things that are actually perfect, right? So she sees the river that's, you know, perfect, that runs 2 ways, but she's like, you know, she has to put rocks in there to make it, you know, flow in 1 way. And the mountain too, that was already perfect, she wants to, you know, put it in a way that, you know, that would have cliffs and all these things, right? Okay, I'm trying to, oh boy, anyways, it's fine. Okay, cool. So, oh my goodness. All right, okay, great. Okay, so we're gonna continue, guys. So grandfather and grandmother says that Coyote sits in my chair, put your nose in my tea. What is that Coyote changing, and why is that Coyote changing all those good things, right? So that is real, that is a real sly one. Ask me that question, I look at those eyes, grab them ears, squeeze that nose. Hey, let go my nose, says that Coyote says. Okay, I says. So, you know, the grandmother grabs them ears, the Coyote ears, squeeze the nose, and, you know, hey, let go of my nose, Coyote says. Grandmother says, okay. Coyote still in Coyote's skin. I bet you know why Coyote changed that happy river, why she changed that mountain sliding down, whistling, right? No, says that Coyote. Look around my house, lick her lips, make them baby noises. Maybe it is because she is mean, grandmother said. Oh no. So we see here that Creator Coyote is actually described as mean, okay? So Coyote B, doesn't really matter whether it's Coyote B or Coyote A, we know it's still the same. Coyote is mean, okay? Described as mean as grandmother. And Coyote then says, oh no, says Coyote, that one is sweet and kind. And like Coyote said, a grandmother is telling the story as if, like, you know, Coyote is actually, she's putting Coyote A into the story, but then she describes him as a sort of, you know, maybe it's his personality, maybe it's and, you know, the whole idea is Coyote A and Coyote B is the same Coyote. So grandmother could be telling the story to show Coyote A that about his character and who he is, and, you know, perhaps why it's not essentially like good for him to be behaving the way he's behaving. But there's no really real background story here. You really need to analyze the story to actually get the truth from the story. But we see here that grandmother is telling the Coyote that, you know, why is the Coyote trying to change something that's already perfect, and why don't you leave it the way it is? But, you know, maybe it's just the fact that the Coyote is mean, and, you know, Coyote actually goes on to say, like, well, no, I don't think so. I think that one is sweet and kind. Maybe it's because that one is not too smart. Oh no, says Coyote, that Coyote is very wise. All right. Maybe it's because she made a mistake. A mistake is never, your character is like your character, right? I mean, it's pretty, you know, it's pretty clear here. Oh no, says Coyote, she made one of those already. So she's already made one mistake, she's made one of those already, but it's a character that we're talking about here. All right, I says, then Coyote must be doing the right thing. Okay, so grandmother gives up and said maybe the Coyote was doing the right thing, right? She must be fixing up the world so it is perfect. So the idea of perfect here is being questioned, right? So there's a question about what is perfect, because grandmother says, from our perspective, like, the river was already perfect, like, it goes both ways, right? It goes both ways, you know. There's choice, but we can say the river goes both ways, right? Could be described as many things, which we're going to analyze later. And she says, you know, she says many things, but then she gives up and says that, you know, maybe the Coyote must have been doing the right thing, and, you know, she must be fixing up the world. So she uses the word perfect again. Yes, says the Coyote, that must be it. Why does that brilliant one do? What does that brilliant one do next? Okay, everyone knows that coyote, what that coyote does next. I says little babies know what coyote does next. Okay, she's just trying to, she's like, well, you don't know, like little babies even know what the coyote does next. Oh no, says Coyote, I have never heard this story. You are a wonderful storyteller. So he goes on to compliment her just to get her to tell the story in full. You tell me your good Coyote story. Boy, you got to watch that one all the time. Hide them toes. What I tell you, Coyote thinks about that river, and she thinks about that mountain, and she thinks about if someone is fooling around. So she goes looking around, she goes looking for that one who is messing up the world. Okay, so the coyote then, you know, she thinks about the river, she thinks about the mountain now. Like, she's like, well, I'm not gonna be fixing, you know, stuff from the branches. Like, I have to really go down to the source. Like, you have to go down to the vine, right, to fix the problem, you know. So she is looking now for the person that's actually causing the messing up of the world, so she can deal with that at the root, right? She goes to the north, there is nothing. She goes to the south, there is nothing there either. She goes to the east, there is nothing there either. She goes to the west, and there is a pile of snow tires. Okay, so now we're going to page 78. We're almost there, guys. And there is some television, okay? There is some television, and there is some vacuum cleaners, and there's a bunch of pastel sheets. So now, where did the coyote go and find this? The coyote actually found this in the west, right? And if we go back to the first, we're going to see, like, you know, how the coyote actually went west. And okay, so let's not even try to bring that confusion here and linking back to the first, but we're going to continue, okay? There is some television, and there is some vacuum cleaner, and there is a bunch of pastel sheets, and there is a hair humidifier, and there's a big mistake sitting on a portable gas barbecue reading a book. Big book, okay? Department store catalog. All right, okay. So first of all, I want you to ask yourself this question, like, what was the coyote trying to, you know, what side was the coyote on? The coyote was on the side of modernization, right? The coyote was on the side of modernization. We're gonna analyze this, right? And we see here that the coyote ends up, you know, going to meet the big mistake and finds the big mistake, you know, around all these modern items. Okay, so we're on page 78. I really want us to go back to where the coyote actually finds the river, right? Okay, yeah, let's go back to page 76. Says yes, and coyote is right, the river is nice and straight and smooth and without any bumps. It's run both ways, not like a modern river. The river runs both ways, but not like a modern river. Okay, so the modern river runs one way. Okay, modern river, just so you know, modern river runs both ways. Okay, one way, I mean one way. All right, it runs like it runs both ways. Okay, not like a modern river. All right, but the traditional one runs two ways. Okay, my battery is actually running low, and we're gonna have to skip to my phone. Okay, I was trying to prevent this, but it's just something that was inevitable, but it's okay. But yeah, so we see here that the mistake is as a television. There's a television in the west where it was, right? There's a television, and there is a vacuum cleaner, there's a bunch of pastel sheets, and there's a hair humidifier, and there's a big mistake sitting on the portable gas barbecue reading a book. Like who? Like the coyote A. Okay, Elo says that mistake. Maybe you want a hydraulic jack. No, says that coyote, I don't want one of those. But she don't tell that mistake what she wants, because she don't want to miss her mouth again. Okay, so she doesn't want to tell her agenda, because the coyote could just, you know, disrupt everything, right? But when she thinks about being flat and full of stump holes, that butthole wakes up again and begins to sing. Psst, psst. What's that noise? Says that big coyote. So now we see, like, you know, even the butthole is traumatized here. Okay, the butthole is traumatized here. like, so we're dealing with trauma here. The coyote being disorganized, and the trauma and everything, and the reaction. Like, what's that noise, says the big mistake. I'm looking for Indians, says that coyote. Real quick, have you seen any? So we see here that it's obvious that it's not actually. Is it the big mistake that's actually making the river to run both ways? You know, is it the big mistake? Here we see that it's not actually, because the big mistake actually is, you know, he has modernization around him too. The big mistake actually, you know, we see here has the television, has the vacuum, has the pastel shades. So the big mistake argues on modernization too. But it's the Indians, he says, that are the ones that are actually wanting to make the river to run one way. Do you understand what I'm saying here? So it says, I'm looking for the Indians because the Indians are the ones that are traditional, that want it to run two ways, right? Says that Indian, real quick, have you seen any? What's that big bad smell? Never mind, says coyote. Maybe you have some Indians around here, okay? I got some toaster oven, says that mistake, okay? Like, as if it's some type of, like, you know, badge. Like, as if it's some type of pass. Like, you know, I got some toaster ovens here, says that mistake. We don't need that stuff, says coyote. You got to stop making all those things. You're going to fill up this world. So, you know, it's saying, you know, who is making all these things? So we can talk about population increase, or more stuff. You know, you've got to stop making those things. You're going to fill up this world. It didn't say it was against it. It just says, like, you know, just stop making those things. You know, we need to have fewer stuff, right? Maybe you want a computer with a color monitor. That mistake keeps looking through that book, and those things keep landing in piles all around that coyote, right? So he keeps looking at that computer, and then we see, like, there are creations just popping up, right? Like, things are just been coming up. Like, that mistake keeps looking through that book is looking at the book, and those things keep landing all around the coyote. So he's looking at the book, and there's creation happening just all around coyote, right? Stop, cries coyote. Golf carts lands on her feet. Golf balls bounce off her head. Okay, so you've got to give me that book before the world gets lopsided. Okay, so we see here that, you know, coyote is trying to make the big mistake to stop reading books, right? Those are good things, says the coyote. So now we see, like, there's a struggle between what perfect is. Like, we're talking about, you know, acquiring more knowledge, but knowledge to actually create, right? We see here that the coyote is saying here that, you know, you gotta stop doing that. Don't try to fix the world, you know. And Indians, and it says, those are good stuff, says the coyote. Like, stuff is good to read. You need those things to make up the world, you know. Big mistake is saying here, Indians are going to need this stuff. So he goes back here to say, like, you know, it's good for you to read because Indians are going to need those stuff that is creating, right? The modernization, the modern things, right? So the modern things is saying that, well, the Indians are actually going to need the modern things.